You're watching Taste of Victory.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Taste of Victory. We got a second place profile with you from the GyroSean tournament. This is from Llamaboy. Got second with Blue Hybrids. Llama, you want to go ahead and take over and show them the spicy text that got you second place at the Stack tournament. How many people were there?
I think there were about 60 something people, so it was a pretty big turnout.
Yeah, it's huge.
Egg choices are pretty basic, just 4 Upa. You know, you're stripping a lot of sources, so you're going to be drawing a lot of cards. I know a lot of decks like to run a 5th egg Kyaremon or run 4 Kyaremon, 1 Upa. But I felt like the Upa triggers more than the Kyara, because Kyara only triggers when you strip a source, but Upamon triggers like every time there's something on the board and you swing, and you want to like be swinging so you can actually like put out pressure, unless you're playing in something like yellow hybrids. That's the eggs. Next up for the rookies, they're also pretty basic. 4 of the BT4 Strawby. Just on play, reveal top 3, add a blue Tamer, and a hybrid to your hand. I mean, it's your best searcher aside from Pokemon, and it obviously can go over your Digitomas as well. Being able to search out your pieces is important because you have like a lot of pieces that you need in this deck. So running this at max is definitely the move. Next are 3 copies of Susanomon. Susanomon is one of the big techs for this format. It says that you're up on your opponent's turn, they can't reduce Digivolution costs, which is really significant into the hybrid decks because the level 5 hybrids all reduce cost. And if you go into this, you lock them out of easily being able to go into their level 5s, which can just like make their overall plays harder because they don't have like their level 5s, which typically enable a lot of their plays like Beowulf, Rhino Kabu, Rihimon, Jet Sylphie. So this card is really, really important in the hybrid meta, and it came up a lot, especially being 3k, it can actually swing over a lot of stuff, which definitely comes up. Next is 3 copies of Madoki, the other Floodgate in blue. Instead of can't reduce Digivolution costs, it's can't gain memory. This comes up mostly against the new Cerberus loop deck. It prevents Cerberus from gaining the 9 memory, so it just makes it a bit harder, and it prevents Lilith Jack Raid shenanigans, which is always nice. And then when playing in the mirror match or against stuff like blue, it stops their memory gain effects, which is always good to have. Then running 2 copies of the new BT7 Strawby. It is reveal top 4, add a Susano, hybrid or Koji to hand, only 1. It's an alright searcher in a pinch. If you like are digging for like one specific card, it'll dig 4. Then to round off the rookies, I'm only running 2 copies of the new Pokemon. Pokemon says on play, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, add 1 Tamer and 1 hybrid or 10 warriors. And then your turn, once per turn, when you digivolve one of your Tamers into a Digimon, gain 2 memory. So since I'm pretty sure all of the level 4 hybrids, except Pedrodramon, I think, cost 2 to evolve over Tamers, makes it free. And for example, if you have 3 memory, your opponent has a Digivolution cost reducer. If you have Pokemon, you gain 2, and then you can still go into the level 5 for 3 memory, and you won't be passing turn, which is always nice. I don't really find myself liking Pokemon too much. It's a great search, but I don't find myself getting as much value off it because it almost immediately gets answered by pretty much every deck. So it's hard to get the value off it, which is why I preferred running more blue rookies to have the, be able to threaten from raising area, because a big part of this format is establishing lethal that can't be interacted with through Tamers, and obviously the raising area is another way to ensure lethal. Next up, onto the level 4s. Really almost like the stars of the deck. There's 4 Korikaku and 4 Kumamon. Starting with Kumamon is very simple. 2 cost to evolve over level 3s, and obviously 2 cost to evolve over Tamers. On Digivolve, strip 1. The deck is built around source strip, and stripping 1 can come up a lot. For example, level 6s typically have 4 sources. So if you play a Tommy and you strip 3, you can Digivolve into this to strip the last source to go ahead and take advantage of the of the stunning effects for Digimon that have no Digivolution sources. And then we have the big annoying card. We have Korikakumon, Level 4 hybrid, costs 3 to evolve over level 3s, and 1 to evolve over level 4s, so you can stack them on top of each other. And obviously 2 cost over Tamers. And it says when Digivolving, if the Digimon has Tommy or a hybrid in its traits, or in its sources, one of your opponent's Digimon without Digivolution sources can't attack or block. So essentially the game plan of this deck is you just stun your opponent's entire board, and then they can't really do anything, and you just keep punching them away while they can't really enter your board unless they have options or something. So Korikaku is one of the big pieces, and Kumamon helps enable that. Next up, for the level 5s, only running 4 level 5s, 4 of the new BT7 Beowulf. As mentioned before, all the level 5s from BT7 cost 1 to evolve over a level 4 if you have a Tamer in the source. And then the when attacking effect, you may bounce a hybrid from its sources, any hybrid, to go ahead and bounce one of your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon. This is really good, not only because it helps deal with stuff like Pokemon, because obviously stunning it doesn't really matter when it's still getting the value, or stunning like reduction blockers, memory blockers, and stuff like that. But it is also very useful because it recycles your Korikaku, so you can go like Digivolve into Korikaku, stun something, Digivolve into Beowulf, swing, bounce the Korikaku back to hand, and now you have that again to continue stunning stuff, which is always really, really nice to have. And yeah, you know, this Beowulf is pretty much mandatory in blue hybrids. Next, for the top end, only running, Only running 2 copies of Magna Garurumon. It says when Digivolving or when attacking, you can add a hybrid from its sources to your hand to bounce an opposing Digimon of the same level. So if you bounce a level 5, you bounce one of their level 5s. So you bounce a 4, you bounce one of their 4s, but you can't go higher or lower. And then your turn, once per turn, when an effect adds a card to your hand, the effect, you can unsuspend any Digimon, not just the Magna Garu, which is always nice. I mean, it just gives you more attacking pressure, which is always great. Magna also just helps, like, it can recycle your Beowulf, it can recycle any other like level 4s in your sources, and it can also help push for lethal by having more damage out, which is always nice and just offers good board control. Other top end you can consider, something that's been talked about a bit recently is Llamaboy as another top end. You know, since you're stripping a bunch of sources and stunning stuff, it'll normally stick on the board. So you go into a Llamaboy, swing for a bunch of checks, and then hybrid for lethal, which is a pretty cool thing. And you can also tech other stuff like Hexablow, you know, just kind of the source strip engine stuff. Then for level 7s, 1 copy of Susanomon. Susanomon is one of the secret rares of the set. It is a level 7 that can Digivolve over any color. It says you can Digivolve this Digimon over a Tamer if you shuffle in 10 hybrids or Tamers from your trash and hand to the bottom of your deck. You know, so it's just kind of basically a hybrid. It can go over Tamers. And then it also has security attack +2. So it is 15k 3 checks, which is excellent. And when Digivolving, you pop a Digimon. The idea behind Susano is sometimes games against yellow can go on for a really long time and you might be afraid of decking out. So adding 10 cards in makes it so it's very unlikely that you're going to deck out. And also, more importantly, it can help close out the game versus yellow, because a lot of the time with like Howling Memory Boost, Hammer Sparks, Sword Joes, you can get enough memory to go into Susano without passing turn. And then, I mean, you're swinging 3 checks, you'll be able to normally wipe out most, if not all, of their security. And, you know, really like switch the state of the game really fast. It's just a one-off because it's kind of clunky. You don't want to see it early, and in some matches you don't want to see it at all. So that's why it's only at 1. You have the BT7 Strawberry that can search it out. And normally if a game is going long enough, even if you bottom deck it off your searchers, like if the game is grinding too long, you'll eventually dig back into it, which is always nice. Onto the Tamers, we have the main Tamer of the deck, 4 copies of Tommy Himi. Security effect, obviously play this Tamer for free, and on play you trash the bottom 3 sources of any Digimon. And it has the inheritable when attacking once per turn, until the end of your opponent's next turn. A Digimon with no sources can't attack or block. Korikaku effect, but on an attack, so you can trigger it off Magna, off Beowulf, even off like Kumamon, which is great. And this essentially facilitates Korikaku. Right, you can play this, strip something, Digivolve immediately into Korikaku, and you stun it. And then if the Korikaku sticks, you can swing and keep stunning and stunning. It's really the main piece of the deck. Being able to like essentially stall your opponent by constantly stunning their stuff and making it so they can't attack. And it's just a really, really good card overall. Costs 3 to play, and it does a lot for the amount of memory that it costs. Looking at the other Tamers, you have your standard 3 copies of Davis. It's your memory Tamer. On play, reveal top 3 out of blue Digimon. Davis actually whiffed a lot for me, which does make sense. You know, there's a lot of Tamers, there's a lot of options, so you're not guaranteed to hit the Davis, but obviously whiffing it still feels bad. But, you know, it happens. You still need your memory Tamer. It enables your, like, Korikaku into Beowulf plays and stuff like that, and so it's just really important to have. 3 memory is a really, really important threshold to hit in the Tamer format, or in the hybrid format, because most of your good Tamers cost 3, your Searchers cost 3, your 4 to 5 combos cost 3, so it's really important to, have that memory available. Next is 3 Sword Joe, another important piece of the deck. Start of your turn, if your opponent has a Digimon with no Digivolution sources, gain 2 memory. And your turn, when a blue Digimon attacks, you can suspend the Tamer to gain 2 or to trash 2 Digivolution sources on the bottom of one of your opponent's Digimon. Sword Joe works great with Tommy. Tommy stripping and Sword stripping themselves. Finally, the last 2 Tamers is the new Koji Minamoto. Security effect, obviously play it for free. And then main effect, once per turn, you may place 5 cards with hybrid and their traits from your hand under this Digimon, or under this Tamer to Digivolve into a Magna Garu for its evolution cost. And then the inheritable is your turn. When an effect adds a card to your hand, gain a memory, and Koji, or the Digimon on top of Koji, is unblockable for the turn. The warping itself doesn't come up as often since, you're only running 2 Magna, but the effect adding is really good, or the memory gain is really good, because you can go like level 4 hybrid, Beowulf, swing, bounce level 4, bounce memory blocker, and then you gain the memory off Koji. So if you have like Hammer Sparks or Howling or something, that can like get you to lethal, or try and like live a turn and survive. And Koji is pretty good. Something you can test over Koji is the starter deck Mat. It is a 2 cost and it gains 1 memory at the start of your turn if your opponent has a Digimon with no sources, so it's basically a mini Sword Joe. It generates a lot of value over time, and it's a 2 cost, so it's essentially a 2 cost rookie, which sometimes you're like 2 memory and your opponent has a memory Tamer and all of your stuff costs 3, so it's kind of an awkward situation. But if you have an ST Mat, you can play that, then play a 3 cost, and then you're like taking full advantage of the memory you're given. So that's another consideration if you want to run it. And then into the options, 2 copies of Howling. Main effect, trash up to 2 Digivolution sources on one of your opponent's Digimon, then stun a Digimon with no sources. And it has the delay effect, trash the card, or like send it to your trash, gain 2 memory. Helps for burst turns. 2 memory is a perfect amount, lets you go into another hybrid. It came up a ton, not only the stunning, but also the memory gain to push for lethal, which is always great. There we go, 4 Hammer Spark. It's an important piece of the deck, and just an important piece of blue in general. Next, a bit of like my own personal preference, 2 copies of Absolute Blast. With this deck, I found myself struggling against level 6s that have passive effects, stuff like Dynasmon, stuff like Ancient Troyamon, that essentially they just kind of sit there, and even if they're stunned, they still have effects that, like hinder your game plan. So Absolute Blast is essentially a way to get rid of them. You don't bounce it to hand, so they can't just immediately go back into it. And they put it aside, it doesn't delete it, so you avoid on deletion effects like the Ancient Troya spawning a body. So it's just really, really good. It came up, the main thing it came up for was insecurity. It saved me from losing a game because they swung, put me to 0, last check Absolute Blast, get rid of their last body to swing with. So, and I had lethal the next turn, so I was able to clutch up and win. And thanks to Absolute Blast, some other games I was able to get rid of Ancient Troya, get rid of like sourceless bodies. It's just in general a pretty good card. You can definitely swap it for other stuff if you want. I just think I like the extra removal, which is always nice. And then obviously the last card is the one of Ice Wall. Got banned, but we still run the one of because having it in hand is really stupid and can just shut down your opponent. You know, lock them to one, they lose 2 memory. Unless they're playing something like Loop, they're probably losing, or they're probably not going to be able to kill you. So, you know, you just kind of pop off, or like, you know, they pass turn and then you kill them the next turn, or you just keep stunning their board. And it's just a way to essentially elongate the game by 1 turn, which is always important.
So what were your matchups? What was the hardest? What was the easiest for this deck?
So it was a 7-round tournament. Game 1 was against the Christmas hybrids, or the red base green hybrids, which I won 2-0, which is a pretty it can be a difficult matchup sometimes, but the other player wasn't really seeing their like Atomic Infernos, so I was able to keep up pretty easily and just like essentially stun their stuff and then, you know, kill them. That was actually the game where the absolute last saved me in security. Game 2 was against Yellow Purple, another like big contender for best deck in the format in the set. It's a pretty rough matchup, but you essentially play for the grind game, and I was able to do that well. You know, set up Sword Joes, set up a bunch of Tamers, and slowly chip away at them while not activating the TK Karis. I also played against Loop, which is why we run the 3 Madoki. It's just, you know, Madoki basically shuts down their deck, immediately demands an out, or they basically can't do anything. And it's not a terribly hard matchup because they have a bunch of Digimon without sources, so your Sword Joe's proc, your Tommy's proc, etc. Jesmon, it's a pretty coin flippy matchup, but I feel like that's just how most matchups against Jesmon go. You know, one game I won because he swung into a Tommy, getting rid of the Greymon source, so he wasn't doing nearly as much damage. And afterwards, I just like stripped and stunned it, and you know, essentially it just did nothing for the rest of the game. And I think another game he just had a pretty bad opener and just couldn't really play the game. Next after that was another Yellow Purple hybrid, right? Same thing, you know, play for value. I think that game was actually on stream. So like, yeah, basically just played the slow game, you know, set up Tamers, wait patiently, try not to activate TK Kari, just go for that. My only loss in the tournament was against Yellow Base Purple Cherubi, which I think it feels like it should be a relatively good matchup, but it can be hard to activate like your Sword Joes and your stuns because they constantly pop their own stuff, so you're never really getting like full advantage. And you know, since you can't interact with their Tamers, they like swing, it either dies and they bring back on a Tamer, or they kill it themselves, get some value off of Calling or Deathclaw, and then they have another Tamer and you can't really do anything with the Tamers. So it was a pretty rough matchup. And then the last matchup was against Pure Green Hybrids, which was a pretty close game. He had Nidhogg, which did surprise me and won him one of his games. But those are my matchups. I think for me, I still feel like Yellow Purple is the hardest matchup because I feel like you need to be able to like pilot really well, or else you might just get like blown out of the water. But obviously I lost to Cherubi, which I think could be a difficult matchup. I think it depends a lot on what your security is, and you know how like the game state goes, what they have in hand, what you have in hand. It's a very like game by game thing. I don't think it's like a set in stone matchup. But yeah, those were my matchups. Ended up going 6-1.
Awesome. That's a really great record with some stat competition. Congratulations, Llamaboy, and thanks for sharing this on the channel with us. All right, well, thank you, and I'll see everyone in the next video.